Well, welcome back to State of the Nation, and isn't it a fascinating time to be watching British politics with the Prime Minister saying that he's going to go on and on, giving clear statements, and yet Cabinet collective responsibility seeming to be not quite broken down, but rather forced. Let's see what Keir Starmer had to say today.
I will never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country. I will never walk away from the people that I am charged with fighting for. And I will never walk away from the country that I love.
Well, doesn't that just remind you of dear old Theresa May, who loved her country too? She said it, however, I think, just as she left office. Listen to this.
I will never walk away from the country that I love.
With enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
The country that they all love. It's beginning to sound a bit like Edward VIII, but we may come to him later. But the key thing is collective responsibility. Our system of government doesn't work unless the Cabinet is united. And this was formulated by Lord Melbourne, the Prime Minister, actually Queen Victoria probably loved when she first became Queen, who said at the end of a Cabinet meeting, when he hadn't been paying proper attention and before they took proper minutes, as he was leaving, he said, "Now, is it to lower the price of corn or isn't it? It's not much matter what we say, but mind we must all say the same." And this has been a constitutional principle since then. Our government depends upon it, that the Cabinet must be united so that it, collectively, can be held accountable to Parliament. But is West Streeting really abiding by collective responsibility? Let's just listen to one or two of the things he's had to say.
The NHS, we have an initiative called GIRFT, Get It Right First Time. That should be our New Year's resolution for 2026. Let's try and get it right first time.
Let's try and get it right first time, which of course implies that they're not getting it right first time and that there is a problem. And we get lots of rumours about people within the Cabinet organising their leadership campaign, having conversations in quiet corners, beginning to plot. Suddenly, out of the blue, a website was set up purportedly to support the leadership campaign of Angela Rayner. This doesn't work. That if you are a Prime Minister, you have the power to hire and to fire. And we see lots of people being fired. We see the Chief of Staff going. We see the Press Secretary going. We see rumours about the Cabinet Secretary going. But nobody from the Cabinet is being removed from office. They're all staying there, even though they are quietly, not so quietly, leaking and plotting against the Prime Minister. And why does this matter? Why should we care? Well, if the government isn't united, nothing gets done. Cabinet collective responsibility is the power base of our system. What is done, what is put before Parliament, the agreements that they make become our laws, become the way in which the country is governed. And if they're sniping against each other, we are not governed. They have a majority of 180 in Parliament to back the Prime Minister and his Cabinet. And any member of the Cabinet who is not willing to support that ought to go, or ought to be fired by the Prime Minister. But the Prime Minister doesn't have the political strength, any remaining political capital, to get rid of those who are conspiring against him. So they pretend in public that they're united, whilst in private they are arguing against each other. And it has to be said, West Streeting is pushing collective responsibility to its absolute limits, putting out publicly text messages that show that he was questioning the whole basis on which the government was operating, whether there was any growth strategy. And we had the quote about whether things were being done right the first time. This undermines the ability of the government to govern, and the Prime Minister is too weak to do anything about it. Now, I know many of you are probably greater watchers of Harry Potter than I am, but there's a great quotation that we can use in this context. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. That is the reality of Cabinet government. One of them, either Keir Starmer or Wes Streeting, has to go. Our system depends upon it. It's what collective responsibility means.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
As ever, let me know what you think, mailmog@gbnews.com, but I am now joined by the doyen of constitutionalists, academic at King's College London, Professor Sir Vernon Bogdanor, and of course my panel, Westminster's foremost cross-party couple, Claire Pearsall and Nigel Nelson. Vernon, thank you for joining me. Collective responsibility matters, doesn't it, in our constitutional system?
Oh, yes, it does. And I think there is one matter on which the whole Cabinet has agreed, namely that Keir Starmer is not an effective Prime Minister. And as you said a few minutes ago, despite what they're saying to the media, they are all considering what the next step should be, and some of them are plotting the succession. And I think this is one of the features added on to the whole Mandelson scandal that has brought so many politicians into disrepute that they're saying different things to the public from what they believe in private.
And the Mandelson scandal is really very important, isn't it? It's on a different level from other scandals that you've looked at when studying British history.
Absolutely. Some people have mentioned the Profumo scandal, but it's on quite a different scale. I would compare it, I think, to the winter of discontent of public sector strikes in 1978-9, which had a very deep effect upon perceptions of the Labour Party. And people were not going to vote Labour until that stain had been removed. I remember I'm old enough to have followed the 1992 election. Indeed, I was on television during the time. And one of the reasons people gave in Basildon for not voting Labour was that it was in thrall to the unions. Now, many of the commentators had forgotten about it. They'd moved on long before, but the public hadn't, and it took Tony Blair to remove that stain. And I think this will be equally serious. Indeed, you could compare it, I think, to something that happened abroad, the Watergate scandal in America, which brought down President Nixon.
Because in our British political system, we've tended to pat ourselves on the back and say that our system hasn't been corrupt. Whereas this seems to be cash, it seems to be sex, it seems to be influence peddling from somebody who was a cabinet minister at the time. It really is at the highest level of political scandal.
Absolutely. And I suspect the public feel that. I was really quite astonished watching a programme on another channel earlier today of a junior Labour minister saying it had been a difficult time, but the drama was now over. This was a minister in the House of Lords, so with no constituents. But I wonder what your ex-constituents think about it. I wonder what they think about remaining friendly with someone who's convicted of a sex offence against a young girl, let's not mince words, against a child. And I wonder what they think of these sums swirling around, £75,000 here, $10,000 there, when the average wage in this country is just over £30,000 a year. what does what Nigel Farage calls alarm clock Britain think about this? It will have very deep and serious effects. And sadly, I think it will affect the whole political establishment, not just the Labour Party, but the Labour Party most deeply.
Well, I think this is very worrying for democracy, actually, because I think voters were very annoyed with us, the Tories, in 2024. They felt we were tainted by sleaze and that we weren't delivering what we've said. They tried something new. They tried Keir Starmer, who stood up and said he was different, it was change, and he was going to be whiter than white. He's then turned out, not personally to be sleazy, though you can argue about the suits and stuff, but to have been unconcerned about somebody who maintained a relationship with a paedophile. And this seems to me to damage the whole basis of British political life.
Absolutely. A Conservative MP, Simon Hoare, the member for North Dorset, said last Wednesday in the House of Commons that he had 3 daughters, and he thought that any association with a convicted paedophile should be a ban to becoming ambassador, to an ambassadorial appointment. But in a way, it's not as much a threat to democracy as perhaps you imply, because the public do have alternatives, whether we like them or not. The populist parties of left and right, the Greens and Reform UK, and I think they will be the beneficiaries of this. We will see it, I think, in the Gorton and Denton by-election on the 26th of February. And I wonder how much longer Keir Starmer can go on after that. Can the Labour Party fight the Scottish Parliament election when the Labour leader in Scotland says he has no confidence in the leader of the party in Westminster? I think they can't.
Well, it's only fair to say that one of Simon's daughters, Imogen, is my most distinguished and esteemed goddaughter. So I share his view that daughters and goddaughters should be protected. Nigel, what defence can you make of this breakdown in collective responsibility with Wes Streeting clearly conspiring against the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister not having the strength to sack him? Doesn't this matter?
Well, yes, it matters, but I don't think it's anything new. That if we go back through the most recent history, relations between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were virtually impossible. I went to Downing Street parties where one faction was in one corner and one faction in the other. Boris Johnson and Theresa May. I mean, that the idea that cabinet
Boris
ministers
resigned.
Eventually,
and said that this won't do and stood to get the leadership.
Yeah, but if you talk about collective responsibility, there obviously, you have those rows within cabinet.
But shouldn't Streeting at this point resign?
No, I don't think he should, because what has he actually done? What he's done is he's put out a load of text messages, and the reason for that was because he was being briefed against about his relationship with Peter Mandelson.
From 10 Downing Street?
Well, certainly he's been briefed against. I don't know it was from 10 Downing Street. Wes Streeting suspects it probably was.
Come on, Claire, let's have the authoritative view from your household, because...
Well, of course he should resign. I mean, collective responsibility is there as a part of how our government works. And the minute that you say, oh, well, it doesn't matter because he was being briefed against, so this doesn't count, well, it absolutely does count.
What has he done wrong?
He has published a whole load of text messages which actually Number 10 had put out administration to all of its members to say, don't publish anything, don't do anything, you've got a police investigation going on, this is only going to muddy the waters.
But none of those things
he has gone out and done it.
But none of those things would have affected the police investigation.
If the Prime Minister tells the Cabinet and tells their own MPs not to do something...
After the fact.
No, but the police have complained.
Exactly.
And the tweets criticise government policy. So you're entitled to be critical of government policy to your friends, but you're not then entitled to put that out 6 months later and say, well, actually, I think government policy is rubbish.
And you talking about sort of Gordon Brown in one corner and Tony Blair in another corner, but they were doing that in private. They weren't doing that when they were out on the stage. No. When they were out to the public would not have known that they hated each other to the extent that they probably did.
I think they did.
They ate ice cream together in a general election
Absolutely.
campaign.
You keep up the impression, don't you? And this is what is not happening
through gritted teeth.
Yeah, but neither Downing Street nor Streeting are giving any impression of unity.
No.
Well, but the point, I'm still back to the bit about, you seem to think that the texts were the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm arguing that Wes Streeting has said nothing against the Prime Minister.
He's got no growth strategy. And he gets everything wrong the first time.
Absolutely critical of the Prime Minister in every single message he put out.
I think ministers have been saying that along the way, that there's an acceptance that this government has made a number of mistakes, that it'd be much better to have got it right first time time rather than have to U-turn later.
So you think it's perfectly acceptable to put out there a whole load of messages saying, you know, what growth? I don't know where this policy is going. They have no way forward. Do you think that is absolutely fine?
They're historical messages.
Not from that long ago.
And the purpose of them was to show what his relationship with Peter Mandelson was like.
That's quite important. Do you think Streeting's relationship with Mandelson was so close that Streeting cannot be Prime Minister?
No. And I think that one of the things the text messages show is the kind of things they were talking about. They didn't have that kind of close relationship. They had a relationship.
They ended their text messages with X's.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think that gives
you find this odd, don't you?
I do find it
odd.
incredibly odd. You only do that to your nearest and dearest.
Do you end text messages with X's to men who aren't members of your family?
I have a close friend who we always end our text messages with an X, yes, who's a male.
Bernard, I don't end with an X to anybody.
No, nor do I.
No.
Well, if I was a member of the Conservative Party or Reform UK, I would hope that ideally Starmer remains, but if not, that Wes Streeting succeeds him, because he too was a close friend of someone who knew and kept on good terms with a convicted paedophile. The Labour Party has to choose someone who's totally distant from all this to try and eradicate the stain.
I completely agree with that. I think the stain is so deep and great and disgusting. Anyway, coming up in just a moment.